The Pies Nation podcast is proudly brought to you by Swish Personalised Videos. Swish connects fans to their favourite sports stars via personalised video messages with hundreds of the biggest footy stars, past and present, available. Fans can surprise a friend or a loved one with an authentic personalised video from their sporting heroes. And that is opportune come Mother's Day being this Sunday. A big chance for you to get your favourite pie, but you have to be quick. They're selling out fast, so be sure to get in touch with Swish and get yourself involved with a special Mother's Day present for your loved one. Luke, it's a great opportunity to get involved. Plenty of Pies mothers out there that love so many Collingwood players. I'm sure there's plenty to choose from.
Yes, absolutely, Nico. A lot of Collingwood mothers, and although my mum will claim she's a GWS fan, I think, well, long story short, but deep down she's a Collingwood fan, and I might have to surprise her with something special.
Maybe a little Harry Perryman just to get the best of both worlds for sure. But you can get so many stars like Harry for 10% off when you use the code Pies Nation. So don't delay. Mother's Day coming up, some big occasions as well. 10% off if you use the code Pies Nation at swish.com, who we thank very much for sponsoring our podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. Nicholas Sacco here, your host once again. This is episode 9 of season 7, or episode 182 if you're counting from the beginning. We nearly pulled off another miracle fight back late in the last term, but the fairytale finish didn't come, and we went down to Geelong by 3 points at the MCG on Saturday night. However, we pick ourselves up and move quickly to what is to come, a 5-day turnaround to Perth to take on the Dockers. Today, we chat through all the key moments of the Cats game, and there were plenty of them. Roll out our SpeakPie segment, speak to our next guest, the crowd competition winner, and give you a sneak preview of an interview with a current Pies player that is set to come out later this week. And despite the devastating loss, we still have a full studio of Pies Nation faithful here. Marcus Callahan, Jack Dugan, Luke Humphries. Welcome, boys. Have we picked ourselves up after that disappointing loss on the weekend?
Good to be with you, boys. I don't think so. I think I'm still somewhere between being mortified we could get Jack Crisp the fairytale that he deserved, and then I'm also a little bit flat that we've dropped a game that I think we'll look back as a missed opportunity, and so much to come out of this match. That was a hectic finish and a really high standard of footy I think we played, Jacko, but we sit 6-2 and we move forward.
Yeah, well, I still think having that mindset of the fact that we are 6-2 is a massive talking point. We would have all taken that after round 0, so important to stay there. But yeah, still within the game itself, walking away from the MCG on Saturday night, Nico, was a tough one, a tough pill to swallow, that's for sure. Lots of trends in our game that I'm sure at certain parts, certain moments, you felt like the game was defined by. We hope that we can rectify, and the best part is we've got a short turnaround up in Freo, and it's a loss that I feel like, as Marcus said, might be one that slipped away and a missed opportunity, but one we're probably not going to be able to fully gauge how much it's going to impact our season, probably for another month, I don't reckon. So hoping that with the short turnaround that we can get ourselves back in form, not even like we had a terrible night on Saturday, but just get ourselves back in the winning column and, be back on track, Lukey.
Yeah, and we talked about it yesterday, but I said perspective matters, and you're worried about the next sort of month now that we've dropped that one and how the pressure builds up a bit. But we probably would have really taken 6-2, 4 or 5 weeks ago. So we got to be pretty happy with that. I was sort of thinking early through the third quarter, I'm like, I cannot wait to come in on Monday and talk about how good this side is and how it's probably one of the best Collingwood sides I've seen in my lifetime. Just the way we're playing, controlling games, they tested us early and then we took it back from them and looked like we were going to go on with a pretty good job. But all of a sudden, it felt like the game just kind of came to a halt for a bit and sort of evened out. And then Geelong Stars came out to play in the last, and ours didn't until probably the last 3 or 4 minutes.
You can still talk about how good this side is, even though we didn't win.
It is a great side, and it was disappointing that I feel like we did let ourselves down a little for the first time in probably 5 or 6 weeks, not to capitalise and go on with the job. Missed opportunities, which have hurt us in the past, some set shots that we should have nailed, and some goal-scoring opportunities that we let slip by. So defensively, we were probably off for the first time in a month at least. So, but that's down to Geelong as well and how they played and coached us as well.
Certainly, and we'll touch on that as well. Before we go to the part that caught our eye, if you're watching on YouTube, we're slowly getting the studio sorted. We've got our first little bit of memorabilia just behind me with the Collingwood drink bottle. But if anyone out there listening or watching has a unique piece of memorabilia that you'd like to donate for us to use throughout the season, let us know. We'll bring our own little things as well. But we really want to make this a black and white theme, even for the other podcasts that use your studio. So if you've got stuff, let us know. We'd love to use it.
And I think great to have stuff from the fans and a little story behind each little thing. Obviously, it's great having our stuff, but if we can get some stuff from the fans and get little stories behind each piece that sits behind us as well.
We'll work through the finer details of the logistics, but if your piece of paraphernalia ends up on these shelves, I think it's only fair that there's a story that comes with it that's told on this podcast. So fully accept why someone wouldn't want to give it to us forever, but we might be able to come back to you at the end of the season if that needs to happen as well.
Maybe if it's in high demand, the best story will be the one that features on. We'll see. So, I know the Sash boys are only putting one piece up for every win they get, so it looks like it'll be pretty empty for most of the year, but that's okay. We'll make sure we fill it up throughout the season. All right, let's get to the part that caught your eye from Saturday night. We'll start with you, Marcus.
Thanks, Nico. I'm going with the crisper, and it's an obvious selection. It's not based on his performance on Saturday night. It's more what he did straight after the game, and to front up for an interview with Fox Footy and to have them play the missed kick after the siren and be able to talk through that with, like, can you imagine how much emotion was running through his mind and body, just the adrenaline and also being consoled by family and teammates. I just thought that was a real class act for a guy to say yes to the interview. I'm not sure what the legalities are around that as a player, but yeah, to grab the mic and just move through what would have been a huge whirlwind, I'm sure, even after he left the ground and tried to put his head down for the night. But I just think it speaks volumes of the man, Nico, and to see all of the boys get around him. I'm sure we'll unpack it in a bit more detail in our analysis, but just full credit to Crispy for the way he handled himself in really tough circumstances. Yeah,
I mentioned in my immediate post-match reaction video, it brought a little bit of perspective to the situation, seeing every single Collingwood player get to him pretty much as soon as the ball left his boot, because unfortunately we knew from that moment that he hadn't kicked the goal, but then seeing his kids and family stream onto the ground and console him, a few Cats players going up as well. Yeah, it spoke a lot about the moment and the emotion around it, and you're right, for him to front up post-game to the media would have been a difficult thing, Marcus, but still had a serviceable game, and we're not going to think of him any less for not kicking that winning goal. It was still a wonderful week to celebrate what he's done for his club.
Speaks volumes, Nico, to the winners only mentality that Flyers brought to our footy club the last 2 or 3 years. It's one thing to, say it. It's another thing to live it. And we got a really, really good example of Jack Chris and all the boys living that on Saturday night. The part that caught my eye this week, I really don't like doing this, especially to one of my favourites.
Stolen mine.
Of certainly the last 3 or 4 years. I love the way he goes about it, but this is not just for Saturday's game, but also for probably his body of work to start this season. It's Bo McCreary. I think he would have been pretty flat on himself on Saturday night. Bo's not one of these players that will ever leap off the stat sheet in terms of scoreboard or in terms of disposal volume, but to highlight that, quarter 1, 2 and 3 was only able to manage the 2 disposals in each of those quarters, and then unable to get near the footy at all in the last quarter, which again isn't a feature of Bo's game usually. What is a feature is his pressure and his intensity around the contest and what he brings, and essentially being a barometer for our forward pressure. Not that was off on the night, but yeah, he's had a flat start to this year, it's got to be said, and it's sort of time I think we start talking about him, because it's probably the first time in a long time where I could sit there and say I would have almost preferred a Lockie Sullivan in this side ahead of a Bo McCreary, which is not something we've been able to say about him. So looking for Bo to lift this week against the Dockers if he is given the chance.
Yeah, like it. Jack goes whack. All right, Luke.
And I was going to go Bo as well.
Sorry,
we did speak about it yesterday, and it was same sentiments in that kind of lost it where he fits in this grand scheme of things at the moment, and he's just will and hunt and pressure has completely evaporated. And if he's not bringing us that, what is he bringing us? So a few things to work on for him. Mine's probably another obvious one and been touched on as well by us and through the media over the last day or two, Jordan De Goey. This was probably his worst performance of the season easily, and further touches on what we've spoken about already, in that where does he fit in the side? Does he need some rest? Does he need to build his match fitness elsewhere? Or how do we proceed with Geordie in this side? Position-wise, forward, in the midfield, just feeling all over the place at the moment, a bit lost. Almost looks like he doesn't want to be out there and go as hard as he can for the footy. A few times he would go to nudge his opponent off, wanting the one out the back, and it just wouldn't work. It'd end up out of bounds, or his opponent would mark the footy, and just not wanting to put in 110% while he's out there. And it's starting to become really noticeable now.
Yeah, I mean, we were pretty heavy on this topic for the last couple of weeks. Now I was still starting to catch up after a performance like that on Saturday. What I want to ask you, gents, is I think we were pretty adamant about him still playing in this side despite the lack of match fitness, and just trying to manage him through the next couple of weeks after seeing the performance he had on Saturday. And I thought it was interesting. I mentioned it in our group chat that in the first quarter, a few of those inside 50 entries were focused directly on getting him involved, and he was either just caught out of position or the kick maybe just wasn't that great. So I don't know if it was an exact directive, but what I want to know is, do you still have the belief that he needs to be in this side in order to get match fit, or does your mindset shift towards potentially seeing him have a bit of a prolonged rest to see him get back to full fitness?
I don't think the prolonged rest is going to happen, even though I still think there's some merit in him being managed, or whatever the hell they'll put next to his name if he comes out of the side. Still unclear about whether VFL is the best option, but I think what we saw on the weekend was when you play a quality outfit like Geelong, those sort of cracks are going to show way more for someone who's not 100% cherry ripe. Against the Lions, I think we didn't see it because they were flat, and that could have been another case where Geordie played, but probably wasn't going to show up as well as he could have. But it's clear that if we're going to be playing a top four side, or obviously didn't play against GWS, but I think that's where we're more predisposed to a Geordie De Goey performance that's nowhere near the mark. And to come into the game and have a little bit of influence is okay once we're on top, but we never really got on top, or as far as we should have, through those second and third terms. And it came back to bite us against one of the best teams at finishing games in the comp at the moment, Jack.
Yeah, for sure. He's now going to be a really big one to watch over the next few weeks if he is in this side. I think if there's a blueprint for Geordie for the way forward, we know he might be battling an injury, he's certainly battling match fitness, but Lockie Shooter, what else? Lockie Schultz. Sullivan Schultz. There's too many Lockies getting around, Nico. But Shooter is a very good example of how you can still carry yourself when you're not in the best form. And I think if Geordie can just keep it simple next week to bring in intensity to his game, bringing pressure, and use that as the platform to leap off and hopefully explode into season 2025, then I think that's the way forward for him, because there was times, honestly, on Saturday night where it just looked like he was uninterested.
Yeah,
and it's how you act when things aren't going your way shows a lot, and that's where Shooter, when things weren't going his way necessarily, we could still come on here and talk about the efforts he put in, the tackles he laid, and the pressure he was showing. So that's, I think Bo and Geordie are both in the same boat. You could probably throw a couple others in there a little bit. I think we didn't go as probably harshly on Bobby's first half or first three quarters last week. I know he finished the game pretty well, but just his first half. Again, he can be another one that shows glimpses of not looking like he wants to be out there. Thankfully, he did recover last week and put it on the scoreboard and had a few nice moments, but there's just a few guys in our side when things aren't going well, they really do show it, that it feels like they don't want to be out there sometimes. So I know a loss exemplifies a lot of these things, and we can be quite negative when we do lose. If Jack Crisp kicks that goal, all these negatives aren't even being spoken about over one kick. But I think it's almost the loss we needed to have at this time of the year to show that we aren't a perfect football side yet. There's guys in there that might not or should not be in there potentially, and there's still a lot of improvement to come. Little
tidbit as well, if that steel side bottom clearance goes a little bit to the left, Jordan De Goey's taking the mark inside 50. You just wonder what that would have been like.
I felt like, though, there was no one else on the ground. We can talk about fairy tales and it being written in the stars, but I wouldn't want anyone else to take that kick
absolutely.
than Jack Crisp. Long leg, grand final goals, both from outside 50.
Got the distance easily in the actual kick anyway.
Yeah, actually, I couldn't ever. If people were asking me, like, who would you want to take the kick, and I would have said Jack Chris 100% every day of the week from 50 out after the siren. Unfortunately, I don't know, like we were talking about it yesterday, Lucky, but as soon as it came off his boot, it was, we knew it wasn't going through.
I think the moment just got to him, obviously the week it's been and the milestone he hit. I think he just rushed it a bit. He could have taken another 30 seconds and really just calmed himself down. And there was no, like, obviously after the siren, there's no shot clock. You can take as long as you want. So I think he could have just slowed down just a touch. It's easy to say now in the studio instead of 80,000 screaming fans. But it probably worked out better for him to miss the way he did miss than to look like it might have been going in and then kind of fade at the end, because it was like, oh, well, that's it. Like it wasn't like, oh,
for the sake of an extra couple of seconds.
Yeah, and like the loss didn't hurt me as much just because to me the game was over 4 minutes prior, and it was just like we got that bonus of having the excitement of a Collingwood finish like that, and we've been blessed over the last few years to come out the winner on most occasions. So it can't always go our way, and it probably teaches us that, you can't let a good side like Geelong back into it because you're going to pay the price.
Yeah, you summed it up well on Twitter, I think. Just, you're right. We've had some pretty good moments.
Well, you think the last 3 years we've had after the siren win from our kick. We've had an after the siren win from an opposition kick that's missed. Carlton, remember that?
Yeah,
and
I remember.
And so then this year it's gone the other way. So and obviously all our close wins that we've had, most of the time it's gone our way. So it's not always going to happen.
I'll finish on a positive with the part that caught my eye, and I'm actually going with two men because these two men are mainly the reason we were in the game for as long as we did. First of all, it was Brodie Mychek for a Colossus last quarter. I know he finished with 4 goals, 3, but 2 final term goals. It was his marking that really stood out to me inside forward 50. It was going to be the struggle with no Dan McStay. We're going to have to rely on a few. Coxie had some opportunities, didn't take those, but 4 contested marks and 6 marks in total, all of those inside 50, I thought were pivotal to us getting the game back on our terms at times and helped us nearly pinch it in the end with those 2 goals in the final term. I thought Checkers was outstanding. He finished with 8 coaches' votes as well for his efforts. So it was nice to see him get himself back on track after a few quiet outings here and there, but with no Dan, we can always rely on a Brodie Mychek to stand up. So I was super impressed with him, as I was with our former skipper, Scott Pendlebury. I think that was one of his best games of the season, no doubt. 26 touches at 88% disposal efficiency. He was so crucial in that second half. Footy IQ off the charts. I mean, to sell some candy and then get the kick in the pocket to Membry in that third term, it really emphasised where we were at that stage of the game, even though we weren't taking too many of our chances. It would have been easy for him to go for a goal, particularly after he kicked one himself.
Me and Jack said he should have had the shot.
He should. And it was the percentage play. I mean, Membry was right there for the taking, 10 metres out directly in front. But gee, that would have been a massive moment in the game.
Do you reckon
in the years back?
Do you reckon he's got the trip from 40 out?
I reckon he does. He just doesn't showcase it as often as he probably would like to, particularly in a game sense. He's done it before.
Yeah, for sure. I was just like if you're within range, surely you're shooting after a balk.
There was one in the last quarter. I think he could have had a snap similar to his goal, but he ended up handballing it off, and it was almost a hospital hand pass that got swallowed up. And that was the one where I think Jack was saying he should have had a shot. That was the one I was thinking where he should have snapped it on the left, but it was a good pass off to Membry, I thought.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely a percentage play.
Well, it fooled everyone pretty much, but Membry knew exactly what he was planning to do. But yeah, I thought Pendles and Checkers were the 2 main reasons in that second half while we were in it with a shot in the last moments of the game, and I just thought they were excellent, as they have been many times throughout the season. So well done to them. I want to chat a bit more analytically and talk about this second half in a bit more detail, because really dominated that third term, I felt, once again, and we just weren't able to take our chances. It all started with a first half, and again, I mentioned this in the immediate post-game. So we've been known a lot this year to use the flanks, use the wings, and then cut the 45s to find the corridor when going inside 50. Geelong identified that pretty early in the contest, and that allowed them to get a really good start. But credit to Fly for then changing things up, because the second we started going down the corridor and we just set ourselves back a little bit defensively, well, the pressure really came to Geelong, and we were able to force turnovers and then go from defensive 50 to attacking 50 pretty easily with that corridor use. Maynard was a prime example of that. And we continued that into the third term, but unfortunately it just looked like we weren't getting any reward for effort. being a bit too fancy inside 50, I felt, with the over handballing and the over kicking. And that didn't allow us to put ourselves in a position where we deserved to be to go ahead and win the game. And then the fatigue starts to set in the final term. Geelong are the second best team in final terms. They win it by an average of 18 points in 2025, so they were always going to come hard. And then I think we just lost the game in the clearances. Bailey Smith and Paddy Dangerfield combined for 24 disposals in the final term alone. Won them the game pretty much. Take away what we need to over the last few minutes. But I want to get your thoughts, boys, on how you felt that second half transpired and why that was a big telling as to how the game was resolved.
Yeah, thanks, Nico. I think you really touched on a key point in your opening comments there, and it was the way the ball was entering inside 50 throughout those second and third terms. The way we were changing the angle, switching the ball to disposal, it was awesome. I don't know how you boys saw it, but I was really impressed with how we weren't just going through that tightrope around the boundary. There was heaps of guys in the corridor getting access to overlap handballs. Dan Houston, Isaac Quainer were really good alongside Maynard for that. But it was just that last kick inside 50 where we did resort to those longer bombs. And even with Tom Stewart out of the side, they've got enough quality defenders in the air that were able to cover. And so whatever their directive was from a defensive unit to make sure they had coverage, their half-backs pushing up or their midfielders getting back to prevent that kick that was the one I think you talk about where we get that set shot.
Yep.
I think Josh passed to Nick Dacos, and then that shot that Nick
Prime
Dacos
example of what
is
we were
exactly
trying to
what
do.
we're looking
Yep.
for, but we just didn't get enough of those entries. And I think that's why, despite having more inside 50s in the game, maybe +6, our scores or our percentage from scores inside 50 was down 5% or thereabouts. And that tells the game for me because Geelong were just getting higher quality looks, Jack, when they actually got it forward.
Yeah, for sure. And another one, like just the open play goals. I felt like we just couldn't buy one the whole night. When we're talking, Nico, over handballing, the chaos ball inside 50, which, although it wasn't clearly not a directive and not the way we wanted to play on Saturday night, being so good in other areas, but just when we got our opportunities just to snag one, 10, 20 metres out, anytime Geelong got that opportunity on the night, they nailed it and they looked slick, they looked clean, they were efficient. And not that we weren't efficient with our goal kicking or anything like that, but just felt like we just put ourselves under so much pressure and just weren't quite able to nail those goals. And again, in a game of moments, and that's what the game came down to in the end, a game of moments. Geelong were far better at taking their chances and kicking those goals from open play than we were, and it really told the story of the game, Luke.
Well, they got a couple real easy out the back ones. Obviously, it's been a weakness of ours over the past couple of years. It felt like we've corrected that to the most part, but for the first time, it felt like this season, other than the opening round, it felt like we were exposed again out the back. You nailed it with the last kind of play inside 50 and getting a bit sort of building our own pressure up again. This was our weakness in the first few weeks, was we're getting some good opportunities, we're getting it in there, but then we're all messing about with it and no one's taking that shot, no one's taking that opportunity. And it felt like, again, we were messing about with it, whereas Geelong were just clean inside 50 and taking their opportunity.
So highlight, I thought, by when we had a bit of like a slingshot play off half-back flank and the ball ends up with Steele sort of 50 metres out, 55 metres out from goal. Obviously, unless it's a grand final, doesn't have the journey from there. And then we immediately reverted back to that kick mark style of footy, which in that moment, that's not the right thing to do. The right thing is just get it in there, get it quick and pump it long and see what happens and let your small forwards go to work. But unfortunately elected to go slow, which, it doesn't matter if you've got the best setup defence in the league or not. AFL teams are far too good at shutting that kick down.
Yeah, I felt we were pretty stagnant in the back end of that third term and the start of the final quarter. It was only when we were in the situation which we've known too well in the last few years, where we were 3 goals down with 5 or 6 minutes to go. That's when we turned things around. And again, great to see that we were able to recognise the situation and switch tact. Too little too late perhaps. But yeah, I understand that we do want to go slow at times and look at those 45 kicks and wait till we find someone just inside 50 to have a set shot. And, we've used an example before, but yeah, it just felt like we were a little bit off. And Luke, you touched on team defence. Jeremy Howe was managed, so did not play, and We looked a little bit exposed. Wonderful to see Darcy Moore back, don't get me wrong, but unfortunately a few direct turnovers from him saw Geelong get some pretty easy goals. I thought Shannon Neal was going to have a career night 5 minutes into the game when he was taking some marks just inside the paint of 50. So, a few holes that were a little bit exposed. There were times where Bruz was on Jeremy Cameron, which I didn't particularly like, and Chris was our deepest defender at times too, when Geelong's wingers were running both ways pretty deep. What did you make of the defence as a whole, and what do you think needs to be tightened up in the future?
Well, it was a very poor game from Das, and we'll forgive him for that, but that replay of him slapping the ball back gets worse every time. So very frustrating night. But yeah, I think I read a comment on Twitter maybe about how obviously missing the game, but potentially being a bit too cute with selection this week and knowing who we're up against, the Geelong forward line. And obviously we're wanting to manage guys throughout the season, but this is 1 week where it may have come back to bite us and hurt us in the long run. Is that we lose Howe, but what did we sacrifice in that back line? Because clearly it probably was the defence's worst performance, at least since the opening round game. How do you see that?
Yeah, not like that. Look,
not as bad.
No, not as bad.
Well, yeah, and that was what you touched on as well, Nico, with guys, certain players being in positions, and you touched on it with me yesterday, was Jack Crisp in the goal square. Like, how does he end up in fullback goal square, letting easy marks kind of from the goal square point of view? So
yeah, maybe you're spot on probably, because now you think about it, I think because a bloke like Jeremy Cameron hasn't come out and kicked 6 goals, as has been the case, I think ever since he debuted for GWS, he just seems to, I think, it's not gamble responsible. Sportsbet would have had him at $1.01 to kick 2
he only kicked 1, didn't he?
Yeah, only 1 for the night. I reckon it would, no joke, without looking at the stats, it'd be the quietest game he's had against Collingwood in forever, it seems like. So I actually thought, blokes like Billy Frampton on the night were okay, considering that they had to manage that load. But yeah, I forgot about that one.
It was Steele as well. I think that's when he got Mark of the Year put on him.
Ollie Dempsey, he had a really good
as well.
game.
So it's probably not individual defenders. It's just as a team, the way we defended and where certain players were ending up at certain times. And obviously we let a few out the back as well. So how do you see that, Marcus?
Yeah, look, I think coming back to when we manage particular players, we've really got to think carefully. I know we've got the 5-day break and how we had to put in a huge effort without Darcy Moore on Anzac Day. But to me, I was just like, he is just missing so bad right now in terms of not just his touches, he's really good with his disposals, generally speaking, but how he organises other defenders as well. And so to provide that cover for someone like a Billy Frampton, even though Jeremy Cameron wasn't getting off the chain, he's just such a reassuring presence in that back six. And so for him to miss, I just hope that if there's talk about who's going to miss when, if we're coming up against a serious top 4 contender or just a really seasoned outfit like a GWS again or a Geelong, Hawthorn I think are a little bit more volatile, but I just think we need experience and our best troops out there when we're playing really big heavyweight sides, Nico.
Well, it looks like changes of plenty are expected on Thursday night against Fremantle. At least that's what the original reports are. So I'll be fascinated to see where we go. We'll touch on that a little bit later as well with the VFL report later on in the show. I think we've done well to record for nearly 30 minutes and not touch on the umpiring. It's not something we usually do on this podcast, but I felt like it was a strong enough factor that there needs to be at least some type of discussion with us boys, because David King opened the post-game show on Fox Footy and absolutely ripped the umpires to shreds about the fact that the Cats had the last 12 or 14 free kicks of the game, whatever it was. At the time, in the moment, you're pretty heated and the emotions of the game sort of get to you. On reflection, looking at it, I felt like there was certainly some that favoured the Cats. I think the Bobby Hill tackle's been one that's discussed quite a bit. I was happy with that being a trip until watching the footy 20 hours later and seeing the exact same play be rewarded with holding the ball. So I'm not sure with that one. The Schultz rush behind, was it not? That was a fascinating one. The Jamie Elliott free kick that he gave away was an absolute disgrace. That was probably the worst of the lot. But momentum's a big thing in football, gents, and not that the umpires gave Geelong the win by any stretch of the imagination. I want to make that very clear. But there certainly was some type of impact you felt with how those decisions were faring.
Yeah, I guess I'll go with being a bit of an umpire myself.
Yes.
I didn't feel like it on the night until probably the last quarter, and obviously that's the most important part of the game, but it just felt like bang, Geelong. And there was one, I think might have been the Elliott one, potentially. It was in the back, and then they got him for a hold, I think. And just big moments, and obviously we're going to be biased because we're Collingwood supporters, but it was moments where we were getting back into it, and then a free kick would stop us. And that Bobby Hill was a good example as well, where technically it's probably the right free kick. He's got him below the legs, but he's had, 2-3 bounces, running bounces. I'd rather, as an umpire and as a player, I'd rather see that get rewarded as holding the ball to the tackler than rewarding the ball player for having 3 bounces and being mowed down. I know he's slipped below the legs, but in the moment, that for me has to be a holding the ball and you're rewarding the tackler. Other than that, obviously it was the shot on goal. It was at Schultz where it was apparently not touched, and I don't know why you have a score review system if you're not going to go against what the umpires already decided anyway. And
the boundary umpire, though, that's the thing.
And
it wasn't the goal umpire.
And looking at what we're seeing on social media, and the ball's nowhere near his fist, it's like, how are they not seeing that on the night? We've had them go our way on other cases, so it's always going to be how it is. And the AFL just need to put some money into some cameras and technology. And I know it's spoken about all the time, but it's
These are pretty good.
It's never going to improve the way it is, and the game can look like a shambles to people who've never watched it before when they see us going through a review system like that and being confused, comparing it when NBA, NFL, sports like that, and go, what is this amateur league that doesn't even have a goal line camera or some kind of something that proves one way or the other if the ball's been touched. So I know it's a big talking point always, but it's more annoying when it's your team that suffers for it.
Well, one that I can't understand, Lukey, on the NBA and the other sports chat is when you watch the cricket, you can see a ball that's flying 150 kilometres an hour, and you can see the lace of the ball, which part of it's coming off, which part's being shined, which is not. But then for some reason, when the goal line doesn't change, by the way, the whole game. It stays the same, stays in the exact same position. So all you got to do is put a fixed camera there to see it. And we're looking at footage that seemingly was shot back in 2010. So I can't understand. That's been a big gripe of mine for a while. But to the umpire, I think, Nico, we unpack specific decisions being there. I think anyone who's played any sort of level of footy or indeed umpired it, I think would be the field test of that Bobby Hill one was that it felt like it should have been rewarded as holding the ball. And, AFL is not a sport, I don't think, where you can, the ball doesn't even bounce up the same way every time it hits the deck. So it's hard to blame single decisions or single moments for a whole entire loss, but you felt like that was a moment where the wrong decision was made, despite it probably, when you really unpack it, it was the right decision. But yeah,
the thing with that tackle is if that was paid holding the ball, that footage gets replayed on highlight reels for years to come, and video montages where the AFL showing off the game. And it was funny on the screen now they show what the free kick is. It actually did say holding the ball.
Yeah.
It did too. It did too.
Everyone
I did notice that.
It was.
Yep.
So I think, I was screaming that was when we were getting right back into it and almost about to pinch it. And I jumped on the ball, bang, and then it was just heartbreaking.
But with anything, sorry, Marcus, with anything, I think it's just consistency. So Geelong get the ascendancy in the game in the last quarter, and we know that's how our game goes. The team that's getting first use of the footy, putting their head over the ball, is the old saying, generally gets looked after in the free kick department. But as you boys highlighted before, it seemed like when it got to the last quarter, the consistency of calls in the game. Fair enough, you're going to over officiate the game, call the ticky touch in the back, go for it, but it goes both ways, and it was just non-existent in the last quarter.
Look, so much could be said. On balance, against the Dogs, I think we were plus 50 on free kicks, and we didn't say shit about it. So I'm going to reserve my judgment this week. They were plus 7, the Cats. My question is, was it holding the ball before it was a trip? In terms of the action of the tackle, because everyone's like, he's landed below his legs. How many times do you see a guy get caught holding the ball? It's also a push in the back, but it's a holding the ball first.
Yep.
So I'm getting technical about where was the incorrect disposal, and I reckon it's before he's got below his knees or wherever it was. Split-second decision. All the players on the ground started lining up for a Collingwood free kick, including the Geelong players. So I think it's a unanimous one, but I'm sure Razor's Edge or whatever the hell they've got coming up on Fox Footy this week will defend the umpires till the cows come home.
But it is an interesting one that the very next day it gets paid as...
Because that was a free kick, holding the ball before it was a trip. It was just more obvious because it wasn't so
But I reckon
fast.
that was more... You could have paid that more of a trip than the other one, than the Bobby
We could be
one.
here for another 10
But
hours.
it is the great game of AFL. It's you can be right no matter what you pay, and you can be wrong no matter what you pay.
I need to make it very clear for the smartasses out there. We are not saying that the umpires gifted Geelong the
but
game.
to anyone who says that Collingwood are gifted games from the officiating, we get screwed more than anyone. So
very good. Anything else from this game before we move on to our votes and other subjects?
I did have something, Nico. Back to Jack Crisp's amazing effort of the consecutive games record broken. Did you feel like on the night, fellas, I don't know, you two boys are there, I'm not sure. Did you make it in, Marcus, on Saturday? But on the night, I felt like we didn't do enough to celebrate it in terms of perhaps a big pre-game highlights package on the big screen. I feel like if you showed up an hour before the game not having known that Jack Crisp was breaking the record, you wouldn't have noticed it. You go back, cast your mind back 12 months when Scott Pendlebury was going for a different record in terms of I don't know, people might rate him differently, but this shouldn't be understated, this effort from Jack. It may never ever happen again. The likelihood of it happening again is probably close to zero. And it just felt like on the night, whether it was the club or maybe even Jack just opted to not sort of the kind of character he is maybe I don't want to make it about me. But yeah, I felt like on the night we did do enough to celebrate it.
So the next time a Collingwood player breaks the consecutive games records, what's your feedback for the media team? Just a little highlights package at bare minimum?
At bare minimum. I didn't even see he can kick this Chris, he can kick this old boy once on the big screen before the game. That would have fired me up, and it just felt like it was such a Herculean effort. That's not even the right word, but it was such a massive effort, and I feel like we missed an opportunity to really get behind him.
You know what they should have done? They should have played our Jack Crisp quiz from last week. I reckon
that
would have really got.
That would have fired the crowd up, Nico.
Absolutely. All right, well, let's get to our votes then from the night. Curious to see where you landed with these ones, gents. Marcus, I'll start with you.
On the one vote to Crispy, just again statistically not the greatest game, but I don't know if a guy's got votes when he had the opportunity to win it for us on this podcast, but he deserves it for the consecutive games record. Wonderful achievement. Well done, Jack. 2 votes I've gone with. Who was it? Darcy Cameron. I thought he's a player who's gone unmentioned in this review so far, but thought his influence on the game, particularly after they lost Stanley to that hamstring, was fantastic, but we just could not get that last sort of kick inside 50 to capitalise on his good work. And the 3 votes to Mayo Czech for his huge efforts. Jacko.
Yeah, I went with Jack Crisp for the exact same reason. Amazing effort. Won't happen again. Hats off to you, mate. 2 votes to Pendles. General on the night really just seemed to be involved with absolutely everything, forward, back, in the mid. It was amazing, and I gave 3 to Checkers for a really big last effort and a really last quarter effort. But also, Nico, as you highlighted, losing Dan McStay was a massive out this week, and for our structure, and I was personally really worried about what it would look like. So Checkers and Tim Membry should get a massive shout out for their ability to impact the game on Saturday, Luke.
Yeah, I'll give 1 vote for Checkers for that reasoning. 2 votes, I'm going to go Josh Dacos. Thought he was very influential across the ground, 32 disposals, and
very efficient.
Very efficient as well, and kind of flowing into a very underrated season. I reckon his last 3 or 4 weeks, he's been one of our best. And 3 votes, Scotty Pendlebury. Touched on him at the start, but thought again he's just getting better somehow. I don't know, just the way he patrols the ground and his disposal, and you just trust him every single time the ball is around him. So had a nice goal and could have had another one as well, I thought. But just, the ultimate general and getting better as this team gets better while he's out there. So 3 for Pendles.
Josh Dacre was very stiff not to get votes here, but he warrants. I gave 1 to Darcy Cameron. I'm very glad you give him some kudos there, Marcus. His last quarter, he had 15 hit-outs, 3 tackles and 6 contested possessions. Also kicked an unbelievable goal, which I don't think even he could believe that he actually kicked, but finished with 9 score involvements, 23 disposals and 4 tackles. He's continuing to put in one hell of a season.
Can I just make a point, though? In round 1, Briggs went down from GWS and we couldn't get the chocolates, and then again against the Cats. Like, it's just a funny observation for mine in terms of you would assume greater ascendancy through the middle, which I think we had in some key stats, but unfortunately come out with the loss. So there you go.
And then 2 to Pendles and 3 to Checkers. I think they were pretty simple 2 and 3s for me. All right, we're going to park Ask Pies Nation because we want to bring in a very special segment that we sort of highlighted last week, but we've got a bit more time to go through it now. It's SpeakPie.
Growing rapidly.
Luke was very quick onto the pulse and putting it up on the story immediately post-game. We've got some good results.
Well, I will say, like, despite the loss, this little segment of ours that we're pushing a little bit at the moment, it does work well when we have a loss.
Vent sesh.
The way we did, because you just thought straight away, you just want to get things off your chest about whatever, and even just the talking about your emotions from losing a game like that. So I'm excited to hear some of these, Nico.
All right.
Any guidelines for the SpeakPie contributors, Nico?
I think
short and sharp.
Yeah, between 45 seconds and a minute's pretty good.
Yep.
Don't want to go too long.
No rambling. Get on with it.
I have not listened to these beforehand either. So if there's a language warning,
if you ever listen to talk back and you get that one person that doesn't get to their point, no, we don't want any of that. Get to your point and get on with it.
No, that's a very Dwayne's World topic.
I see a few good ones on social media.
All right. Well, let's give these a go. We got plenty through, so thank you everyone that did send something through. I won't get through them all, but we'll see what we have. Let's start with Patrick. So we'll see how this goes, but thank you, Patrick. Hopefully it loads for me first time.
Yeah, pretty unfortunate from Crisp there to miss the goal in his big game, but I think pretty shocking kicking from what Membry. I don't remember if Elliot missed a couple, but yeah, bloody the pigs in yellow fucked us over. Yep. Oh, well, it's always next week.
All right.
That's raw, Nico. This is as raw as you're going to get.
This is
our rating's going to have to change, Nico.
Let's go to David now. Thank you, David.
Well, boys, it's Dave Broadbent here, standing on a very lonely Victoria Park station, full stop. What would have been the absolute perfect way to end the game, unfortunately, was not to be, with that crispy miss, full stop. We can rue as much as we like the poor umpiring decisions, but the reality is the third quarter, when we dominated, is what cost us, when we just simply didn't get the score on the board and there was too much Hollywood stuff and not enough of the safe stuff. We lick our wounds, we get up, we go across to Fremantle and we take revenge in the best way possible.
Very nice.
Very measured from David.
Vic Park Station. Love that.
We'll do Marcus. So thank you very much, Marcus, for sending something in.
You're welcome.
Pies Nation, how you doing? Thriller at the G, hey? Just got to take a little walk around the neighbourhood to collect myself after that one. It's always the bloody Cats. I'm so over Patrick Dangerfield and his pulled up socks. Great player, but it's just too bad that he plays for Geelong. They've always been the thorn in my side, you know. Knocked us out in 07, 09. Felt real good to get one up on them in 2010, and then what they do, go and pinch it from us again in 2011. Hate that team. But anyway, it would have been nice if Crispy kicked straight at the end. But I will take his goal in the grand final over that one. Marvellous effort. Get the games record today. So, hooroo to him. Yeah, scrappy game. Too bad the umpires have no sense of occasion. That's a free kick any day of the week with Bobby Hill. And then what are they doing with Jamie Elliott at the end? And we still almost pinched it from him. So, look, we're all right. We'll right the ship. Feeling pretty good about the year ahead. A lot of signs of 2023. Just hope it's the same ending for the story. And hopefully Crispy gets another goal in the grand final. Hooroo, fellas. 7:30 here in Dallas, Texas.
Ooh.
North Texas Devils have our first intra-club match today, so might have a little kip after this walk. So I'm fresh and ready for that game. Thanks, boys. Catch you.
North Texas Devils, sponsor of ours.
Very nice, Nico. Good to hear from them, and hope the intra-club went well.
Yes. Let's do Joseph. Thank you, Joseph, for sending something in.
Boys, we need draft capital and we need picks. And the conversation so far has been about getting picks for Darcy Cameron, getting picks for Bruzzy. We need to have a chat about Jordan De Goey and whether we start shopping him around, because his body's not up to it at the moment. At most, I've always thought historically he's only showed up maybe once every 4 games and had a really decent performance. He's never been someone we can rely on for week in, week out, and he's relied on those games where he can explode out. His body's not letting him do that at the moment. And his body's only going to get older, basically 30. Trade him whilst we can still get some capital for him. We can get a first-round pick plus for him. I'm sure there'll be teams interested. Trade him, keep Cameron, keep Braz. Collingwood Dynasty.
Well, here I was thinking we're in a premiership window and going along okay, but we're going to the draft, going to the trade table.
Fantastic.
I like it.
No, we're disagreeing that, are we?
No, I just love the alternative views. I mean, we might be out of a job. Not that we have one here, but these are fantastic, Nico.
Oh, no, De Goey, we're keeping him around? Or?
Well, I don't know if we'll get a first round pick for him at the moment.
Oh, that's harsh. Come on.
Do you generally think we'd get a first round?
Absolutely.
We have to. He's a match
Absolutely, we would.
His 2023 final series, even just his grand
If he
final
continues the way he's going for the rest of this year, though, and ends up finding himself out of our team,
That's not going to happen, Luke. Come on. That's not going to happen.
He's worth more than Clayton Oliver. Let me give you a tip.
Oh, he's in a bit of strife, isn't
And he's nowhere near that territory. Geordie, he'll be right. Geordie, it's just going to be a way of navigating his way back in that team. And it is a good point though. He has been that sort of player over since his time at the Pies, where he sort of has a game and then slowly goes quiet for a few weeks and then has a way to impact. But he's a moments player, and in the big moments, we're going to look back on Geordie's career, and he's delivered for us more often than not.
That's what we've waited for, though, is him to fully develop and become
like Petrarca when he finally became that
not
player.
just the moments player, but the guy you can rely on, and he may just never get there at this stage.
All right, we'll do a couple more to wrap up. Here's Jordan, funnily enough. So thank you, Geordie, for sending something in.
That was a quality game. I was at a housewarming in Torquay, wasn't at the game. There was a couple of us Pie supporters there, and when Crispy marked it, Jesus, we lost our shit. I saw black dots in my eyes. I was screaming that loud, and I was ecstatic. Even with him missing it, the script couldn't be scripted. Take out bad umpire calls there. I mean, they've been pretty shit all year, but that's beyond our control. We're still 6-2, even after the loss. We're in a really, really good position. I love this team, seeing Fly after the game, seeing Crispy after the game. I have a lot of faith that we'll be able to bounce back. I mean, it was 3-4, less than a goal after the game. We've got a lot of promise this year. Geelong were pretty good. We were very good as well. In a different world, we could have easily won that game. But yeah, still early in the season, and we're still in a very good position. Go Pies. Love the podcast. Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Geordie.
Very balanced.
Didn't mind that. Let's finish with Jake, who was the one we used as an example last week, and we'll give him another go. So thank you, Jake, once again.
Pies Nation, how are we? It's a bit devastating. Jake again, just wanted to make it in as a weekly caller if I can.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, devastated with that loss. Feel bad for Crispy a little bit, being his consecutive, but what do you do? Honestly thought Schultz was robbed that last behind there at the end of the game. That was definitely wasn't a behind. That was inches away from his thumb. And I just felt like the umpires were a little bit biased to Geelong at the last quarter there. I don't know if it was just me or like that Bobby tackle as well. That was a bit of a rough call sort of thing. A few free kicks they shouldn't have went to Geelong, but it is what it is. A loss is a loss. The lid's still off, boys. Boys and girls, we can't doubt it. The lid is still off. We'll bounce back next week, 100% against Freo, especially after the game they had last night. But exceptional game from all the boys, Checkers, Jamie, Darcy Moore, Braden Maynard, all of them. They all had exceptional games. I'll catch you later.
That's it.
I don't know about exceptional game from Darcy Moore giving up 3 goals. Lukey?
Well,
no comment.
I mean, everyone watches the game from a different lens, so we'll give that to.
That's very diplomatic of you, mate.
Interesting point though about Freo's game last week. I'm sure we'll get to it later in the week with our pre-match preview, Nico. But far out, what do we make of them as well? Like they were abysmal.
Yeah, but they're not going to play that bad again.
That's what I mean. It almost makes me more nervous for Thursday night because you know they're going to come out firing.
Yeah, absolutely. Bolton cost me on my super coach by getting 5 points, but that's another story. I will finish with one more. It's only 20 seconds. This one's from Patrick. So
Dangerfield.
Yeah, pretty unfortunate from Chris there.
Oh, no, I played that one already. Oscar's the one that I was looking for here. So thank you, Oscar.
Red. I'm fucking red. Oh, my God. Imagine he had have kicked that in his 245th game consecutive. Oh, my God. I'm so red. Pissed off big time.
Patrick goes whack.
Thanks. No, that one was Oscar.
Oscar goes whack, sorry.
How old is Oscar?
I don't know, but obviously
old enough to say the F word.
Well, thank you to everyone that got involved. Hopefully this is something we can continue using in the season to come. But that was pretty good, boys, I think.
What's your take on expletives, Nico? Has that created editing?
It's fine.
For you, or are we just going...
it's okay. Yep. As long as it's not consistent.
Raw reaction means any word's okay.
Well, exactly right. That's
adds a bit of flavour and...
Yeah. And it's well into the episode, so... If they're still listening by then, good on them. All right, well, we'll move on then. We don't have a guess the margin because we lost, so I'm sure there would have been some real close ones anyway, Lukey. But our guess the crowd, who we're going to speak to very shortly, we had a 3-way tie this week, Lukey.
Yes, now I'm getting them up.
Oh, sorry. Did I give you much time? Or?
No, I knew we were coming to this. I just hadn't prepared properly. So it was 82,514 was the crowd. Now we had 3 people get 82,525. Now we've got Jules coming on, correct?
Julia, yep.
We had Alison as well, 82,525. So shout out to Alison. I don't think she was the one who was not available potentially. I'm just going to...
Because with a 3-way tie, Lukey, tie. You sort of had to do it by whoever commented first.
By who went first, yes. And our other one was Marie. So shout out to Marie who did message the page at 10:42 on Saturday. So I don't know what time... the game finished exactly, but she was pretty quick onto it, and I felt horrible that she was actually the third one. So
she would have felt confident.
But good on you, Marie, for messaging, and I want to give a shout out to that. And again, anyone who thinks they might have won it is pretty close.
Yep.
Message out helps me.
Make it easy for Luke.
Yeah, but this week it was just crazy to have a 3-way tie, and it was because of Crispy, I believe, 82,525.
There we go. So we played our part as well by attending and making sure that the figure was pretty close. All right, well, let's give Julia a call, and she is our next Guess the Crowd competition winner. Great to see that we've had so many continue to get involved as well. So looking forward to chatting to Julia when my phone allows me to actually put the number in. All right, let's give her a call.
Hello, Julia speaking.
Julia, it's Nicholas from the Pies Nation podcast. How are you going?
I'm really good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Well done on being our Guess the Crowd competition winner for this week. You sound pretty ecstatic.
I am pretty excited. My dad and I have been fans of the podcast for a little while, so I was very excited seeing the crowd number come up when we were at the game on Saturday and realised I might have a shot, and then I got your message. So, yeah, very excited to be here.
Very nice. Now, I figure that there's a bit of crisp relation into what your guess was, but regardless, how did you go about getting the crowd close enough this week?
You are correct there. I mean, my initial thinking was that it was a fully ticketed game, but not sold out. So I kind of went low 80s, and yeah, given Jack Crisp, I thought 82525 was as good a guess as any.
Yeah, well, turns out that you weren't the only one, but well done.
Well done, Julia. Now,
Thank you.
it's Luke here. I just gave another person who got the crowd a shout out, Marie. She messaged at 10:42. I just checked your message. You actually messaged through at 9:58. Now, I reckon that would have been around the time the crowd got put on the scoreboard. Is that correct?
I think so.
That is awesome, because I get really excited when we get in the last quarter. I'm like, here we go, the crowd's about to get shown up on the screen. So love that you were all over it. Were you there, Julia, on the night?
Yes, I'm at every game I can get to with my dad, my nonna, and an assortment of family members.
Oh, beautiful. And how did you find Saturday night and, I guess, the raw emotion at the end result?
Oh, I couldn't believe it when Chris marked it at the end. I mean, my dad and I were quoting the intro that he can kick this because, I mean, having seen the grand final, we know that he can kick it. But, look, it didn't go our way. I've got a few complaints about the game, both from us and from calls made against us. But, look, it was really nice to see the boys get around him immediately when the game ended. And, I mean, that's kind of the thing I love most about Collingwood, like a real sense of community, both amongst the fans and what you can see within the club.
Well, you might as well vent. I mean, this is the perfect platform to do it, Julia, so fire away.
Oh, boy, I might get myself into a bit of trouble if I do.
Julia, just Jack here. Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for your support and your dad's support of the podcast. We really, really appreciate it. Just for next week, looking ahead to the Freo game, are we going to bring the chopping block out and tell a few they need to have a spell in the twos, or do we think we just sort of put it down to just a bit of a down game from a few and hope that they come good by Thursday night?
I feel like Geelong's always been a bit of a bogey team for us. I don't know. I feel like Geelong's been near the top of the ladder for most of my life. But, I'm always a bit nervous coming into those games. But, no, I'm not. The only thing that really concerns me is the fact that this pattern that we're in, where we seem to be frequently dominating play, but then not converting that on the scoreboard. And look, as long as we can get a bit more accuracy, I'll wait and see. I'll leave that to fly. Look.
Yeah, I like it. Yep. Very measured. Thank you, Julia. It's Marcus here. Now, we have a developing segment on the pod called Nick Dacos Brownlow Watch. We haven't actually covered the votes in this episode yet, and I just wanted to get your 2 cents as to whether Nick did enough to get a Brownlow vote against the Cats.
To be honest, I don't think he did, and I don't think that's like any fault of his own. We've just got such a strong team this year. It's been really fantastic to see, like, young guys and old stand-up. I mean, Pendle's goal was just awesome on Saturday night. Look, he might have snuck a 1 in there, but Nick's going to, I think, suffer a little bit from the fact that we've just got a lot of standouts week to week.
No, I tend to agree with you. I think you're on the money there. We all know that he's probably not polled, so he's sitting on 7 votes, Nico.
Thank you, Marcus.
But we're just keeping tabs on this throughout the season. So thanks for your input, Julia.
Absolutely. Out of curiosity, Julia, what would your 3-2-1 have been from Saturday night?
Oh, I reckon probably 3 to DC.
Yeah, nice.
Darcy Cameron. 2-1 between Checkers and Josh Dacos.
Yeah. Nice. I think that was pretty similar to how we were on the pod anyway. Now, before we let you go, Julie, it's been great to have you on this episode of the podcast. You mentioned before that you go to every game that you can, and you've been to some grand finals before. Tell us about what your Collingwood journey has been like and some memorable moments along the way.
I've actually hit my 25-year membership this year, and I'm only 26 years old. So
nice.
I come from a very big Collingwood family. It was drilled into my sisters and I from a young age. We were Collingwood supporters, or we were not living at home. The 2023 grand final, I was lucky enough to go with my dad. And I think the moment from that sticks out to me most is just when DeGoey got that goal after they pulled ahead with 5 minutes to go. I didn't even celebrate. I just fell against my dad. it was so stressed, and then it was just shock and relief. Look, the one thing I do want to shout out from that year, my nonna, who I go to every game with, she's the biggest Pies fan I know and has been anti-tattoo her whole life. But in 2023, I said if we won the grand final that I was going to get a Collingwood tattoo, and then we did win, and she decided that she wanted to go with me. So at age 74, she got her first and only tattoo. So we've got matching magpies on our ankles now.
That is amazing, and I love the dedication. That's better than I did, because I said I was going to get a tat and I never actually did. So I've got to learn a lot. What's her name? What's Nonna's name?
Silvana.
So shout out to Nonna Silva then. That's fantastic. Julia, it's been fantastic to have you on as part of the podcast, and hopefully we see you back in the tattoo parlour later this year when we win another flag.
Oh, that's the dream, guys.
Thank you for having us. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Julia.
Thanks, Julia.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
That was Julia as part of our Guess the Crowd. That could be you if you guess the crowd closer. No, keep the cans on. I'll explain why in a sec. But that could be you if you join the Guess the Crowd competition. So keep an eye out for Lukey's posts in the lead up to each game. If you guess closer to the pin, that will be you joining us for a segment on the Pies Nation podcast.
It's not too late, mate. Tattoo shops haven't shut. There's still plenty of time to get the legs and the arms dirty. I'm yet to do it as well, Nico, so maybe we can go in and do it together.
All right, maybe we should. Yes,
I won't show my other one, but I got two.
Our review episode after the grand final, you had them ready to go.
Ink was still dry.
It was one of those things I waited, like 2010, I was too young, and it was just, you had to go do it once we won again.
Got a couple of things to go before we wrap up, but we said off the top of the show that we were very fortunate to have a chat to a Collingwood player today, which will be part of a longer bonus episode that you can expect to hear on all your podcast platforms tomorrow afternoon. But I thought I would give you a little bit of a snippet. It was great to sit down and have a chat to Ned Long, who of course has made the midfield position his own after a terrific start to the season. And just to give you a bit of a sneak peek of what we can expect from that interview, it was fantastic to chat to Ned. So thought it'd be nice to give it a listen. You touched on being around some of those players. It must be a little bit surreal to be included in the same group as Nick Dacos, Scotty Pendlebury, Steele Sidebottom, but not just be included. You complement their game styles pretty well all around the ground and particularly in midfield. Tell us a bit about what it's like to work with that trio and other midfield players around that group and how they've helped you influence your own game at the back end of last year, but also this season.
Yeah, it's been incredible. Obviously, as you mentioned, it's some of the best players in the competition and some of the most experienced players in the competition. So, I couldn't really be surrounded by much better. I'm really fortunate for that. I'm really grateful for that. And I think they've all played a really big role in helping me feel comfortable and sort of played my strengths. Like you're saying, I think we complement each other quite well and sort of bring some different elements to the game. I think we've got a really complete midfield at the moment, which is really strong, obviously, from Darcy Cameron to the ruck. Obviously, Steele, Pendles and Nick, like you're saying, and even our wings, Lipper and Crispy are playing unreal at the moment, really consistent footy. So, I think it's a really good combination, and they've all definitely made a major impact for me, making me feel comfortable. It also just heaps of learning week to week on things I can focus on or improve on, or just different elements of the game that new things I'm picking up on. So it's been unreal to be a part of the midfield.
There we go. So that's a bit of Ned Long there. You can catch the full chat with him tomorrow night. So keep an eye out on all our Pies Nation social media channels and our podcast streaming platforms as well.
How was it, Nico?
Awesome. Fantastic guy, Ned. Very humble and very appreciative of us being able to have the chance to chat to him, just as we are of him giving up some time because we know it's a busy week for him. But no, great guy and biased a little bit now, but hopefully we get to see him stay in this guy for the rest of the season.
People are going to forget they're listening to Pies Nation and not SEN Radio, Nico. That was a fantastic bit of interviewing from you there and very much looking forward to listening to the whole piece tomorrow when it gets released.
Very nice. All right, the cans can go off now because we're about to wrap up our episode, but not before we get to our VFL and VFLW reports. And I know that the Pies had a bit of a struggle, unfortunately, but weren't able to get the job done, Marcus. So as we usually do, I'll be able to get a bit of an insight from you, but of course Serge has come ready for his full report. We weren't able to get the job done though against the Bulldogs, Marcus.
It was more than a bit of a struggle, Nico. 72 points in the gurgler.
I was being kind, but yeah.
Look, it's not a great couple of weeks for the VFL squad. Unfortunately, going down to the Dogs, they really did lead from start to finish, and I feel like we gave up only registering 2 behinds in the final term as the Dogs piled on another 6 goals. So things need to turn around quick, but for the full lowdown, over to the Surge.
A good afternoon for football, Serge says, at Victoria Park. Only 8 AFL-listed players were available against a more experienced Footscray side. Bulldogs dominated territory from the start, winning centre clearances and stoppages. Only inaccuracy in the first half kept the Pies in the game. We only kicked 1 goal in the first quarter, did Collingwood, but then kicked 4 goals too in the second. Bulldogs kicked 5-3 though to extend their lead to 25 points. Collingwood's defence under real pressure, and it reflected in the stats. The Bulldogs were doubling the Pies in inside 50s, and all of our defenders were our leading disposal getters. The Pies lifted their pressure in the third term, holding off the Bulldogs for most of the quarter, reducing the margin to 18 points. Our inside 50s improved, but we were unable to capitalise on their opportunities. How funny is that? Costly turnovers in red time resulted in 2 goals to the Bulldogs, and they were too good in the middle and very experienced in defence. They turned a 34-point three-quarter time lead into a 72-point win by the final siren. They dominated around centre clearances and kicked 6 unanswered goals to put the game beyond doubt. Collingwood's game plan stagnated in the second half, lacked any cohesion or run, and were overwhelmed in the middle. Once again, Glover, Dean and Jath played well in defence despite the high volume of Bulldogs inside 50s. Overall, the VFL Pies struggled to adapt to the number of changes made and were totally outclassed to lose just their second game of the season. And he put in brackets here, could have been a 100-point loss. So I think it was pretty lucky in the end that they were unable to put anything further as we get the call. Thanks.
Ned Long calling back.
That's it. He must have heard how much we were highlighting him. But yes, unfortunately, VFL Pies weren't able to get the job done. But looks like, according to Serge, Marcus, it was due to quite a few changes around the park and a good chance to bounce back next week.
Now, I'm just having a squeeze on my phone. Charlie West was one that I was
only
wondering.
played a half, I believe.
Okay.
So we'll touch on... Actually, you mentioned Charlie West. I want to spend a couple of minutes on him. It looks like he's going to make his debut against
I think he's
Freeman.
ready to make that debut. Yeah,
from what we've heard, yeah. He's kicked, averaging 3 goals in the VFL at the moment.
Thereabouts, yep. So, look, clearly undermanned side, and we now sit outside the top 10 in 11th. We need to correct that this week. We're playing in Preston, and we've got...
Blance.
Yes, the Blance. So, playing on Saturday, Nico.
Yeah, Saturday.
2:05.
10th of May. We should win that by about 3 figures. The Bullants are absolutely hopeless. But that's okay. We'll just get ourselves in winning ways. Meanwhile, in the VFLW, the Pies were unable to get the job done over the Bulldogs at Victoria Park either. We went down by 23 points. The Bulldogs kicked 6 goals, 13. The Pies just 4 goals, 2. So dominated there, unfortunately, and were unable to get the job done. Speaking of easy wins, I think we're capable of doing that in the VFLW as well this week because we're taking on Darebin. That's a Saturday 10:30 game. That's also over at Preston City Oval before the VFL match. So I know I'm slagging my northern mates with Darebin and Northern Bullants, but I'm just telling you from now the Pies should be able to get 2 pretty good wins.
The Falcons, is it?
Falcons, they are. The Darebin Falcons, absolutely. All right, well, that's going to do for this week's episode of the Pies Nation podcast. I'd usually have a game for you, but I'm going to save it for next week where we've got a little bit more time. I've got a few more interesting ones up our sleeves.
Lots of new stuff happening on the pod, Nico. So
exactly
I think
right.
We're, almost at capacity for today.
Got to keep you on your toes. So until next week, Marcus, Jack, Luke, thank you for joining me, boys.
Thank you, boys.
Thanks for having us, Nico.
Always a pleasure.
And until next week, I've been Nicholas Sacco. You've been listening to or watching the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. We love all our listeners and viewers across Australia that enjoy the Pies Nation podcast, but we love our overseas viewers and listeners as well. And one of those that have gotten on board are the boys and girls over at the North Texas Devils in the US, who are looking for players to join their sides ahead of the 2025 season. Based in Dallas, Texas, and established back in 2020, they're hoping to bolster awareness of Australian rules football over in the US. And any of those listening or watching our podcast that are heading over to the US at some point this year, the one team for you to get involved with is the North Texas Devils. We'll give you all the information in our subscription descriptions, I should say, across our podcasts and YouTube. But a great opportunity to get involved with some Aussie rules and teach the Yanks the best game in the world. And you can do so thanks to the North Texas Devils.